Cristiano Ronaldo, the greatest athlete in the world, did not rise from glory. Before the trophies, before the records, and before becoming the greatest goal scorer in football history, there was a difficult past. A past shaped by early decisions, silent sacrifices, and obstacles that would later forge the almost unbreakable mentality that defined his entire career. In the previous episode, we returned to the beginning. We saw Cristiano Ronaldo's birth on the island of Madeira, the simple reality of his family, his first steps in football with Andorinha, and the early signs of an ambition far bigger than the island itself. Today, the story moves forward to a decisive moment, because talent alone is never enough. To become real, it requires rupture. And for Cristiano Ronaldo, that rupture came very early in life. In Madeira, Cristiano already treated football as his absolute priority. While other children divided their time between school, play, and sports, he made a clear and early decision: football would be the center of his life. His family, despite clear financial limitations, supported that choice. His mother understood that this dream was not only passion, but also a possible way out of a difficult reality. In 1995, at just 10 years old, Cristiano took his first major step away from Andorinha by joining Nacional da Madeira. The agreement between the clubs was simple and symbolic, reflecting the reality of local football at the time. Nacional paid Andorinha with 2 full sets of uniforms and 20 footballs. That was the official value of a transfer that years later would gain almost ironic significance, considering the player Cristiano would become. At Nacional, Cristiano began facing more demanding competitions and a higher level of organization. Even though he was physically skinny, his talent was obvious. Coaches quickly noticed something different: speed, dribbling, and above all, an uncommon obsession with the game. It soon became clear that the island of Madeira was no longer enough for the size of his ambition. Once again, a key figure enters the story: Fernando Sousa, Cristiano's godfather and someone very close to the family, began speaking of the boy to influential people in Portuguese football. One of those names was João de Freitas, president of Sporting Supporters Association in Madeira, who had direct contact with Aurelio Pereira, the legendary scout responsible for discovering players like Luis Figo, Paulo Futre, Ricardo Quaresma, and many others. At that time, the scouting process was simple and heavily based on experience and intuition. Aurelio decided to give Cristiano an opportunity: a 1-week trial at Sporting Clube of Portugal's academy in Lisbon. In 1997, Sporting chose to take the risk and bring Cristiano Ronaldo to the mainland. The negotiation with Nacional involved Sporting assuming an old financial debt of around 25,000 euros that Nacional owed, with no direct cash payment. For a 12-year-old boy, it was a huge gamble, but Sporting decided to take it. For the first time in his life, Cristiano Ronaldo boarded a plane alone and left Madeira for Lisbon. The change was brutal. Far from his family, in a highly competitive and unfamiliar environment, he faced one of the hardest periods of his youth. His Madeiran accent set him apart, the homesickness was overwhelming, and there was no exact age category for him. Cristiano was forced to play in age groups 2 years above his own, facing stronger, faster, and physically more mature opponents. Many times he thought about giving up and going back home. The adaptation was harsh, lonely, and emotionally exhausting. On top of that, Sporting demanded strong academic performance, something Cristiano never prioritized with the same intensity as football. In the year 2000, another major obstacle appeared. Cristiano was diagnosed with a heart condition that required immediate surgery. At 15 years old, he was sidelined for nearly 3 months, facing the very real possibility that his career could end before it had even begun. When he returned, he encountered yet another challenge. The Sporting coach at the time, Laszlo Bologna, delivered one of the unbelievable evaluations in modern football history. According to him, Cristiano was weak in the air, technically fragile, defensively poor, physically weak, tactically unaware, selfish, lacking composure, and excessively individualistic. He even said that Cristiano behaved as if the ball belonged only to him, that his dribbling was ineffective, and that he would not select him unless he changed.
Let that sink in. Cristiano Ronaldo, weak in the air? Cristiano Ronaldo, physically fragile? Cristiano Ronaldo, tactically unaware? Few assessments in football history have aged this badly. The player once described as fragile would become one of the most physically dominant athletes the sport has ever seen. Elite aerial ability, unmatched strength, tactical intelligence, and an ability to decide the biggest matches on the biggest stages. But at that moment, those criticisms became fuel. Cristiano responded the only way he knows, by working harder than everyone else. He improved physically, made smarter decisions on the pitch, and transformed raw talent into consistent performance. His evolution could no longer be ignored. In April 2001, at just 16 years old, the moment that validated years of sacrifice arrived. Cristiano Ronaldo signed his first professional contract with Sporting Clube de Portugal. The deal lasted 4 years and guaranteed a monthly salary of around €2,000, modest by European football standards, but life-changing for someone from a humble background. Even more impressive was the release clause, €20 million, an unusual figure for a teenager of that age. That contract changed everything. For the first time, Cristiano was able to bring his mother closer, stabilize his family in Lisbon, and fully focus on football. The boy from Madeira was no longer just a youth prospect. He was now officially a professional player for Sporting Clube de Portugal. That season, Sporting won the Portuguese League, the Portuguese Cup, and the Super Cup. Young talents like Ricardo Quaresma and Hugo Viana were integrated into the first team. Cristiano had not yet been fully promoted, but the context was shifting. After the departure of Mario Jardel, the club faced financial difficulties and had little room to sign new stars. Relying on the academy was no longer a choice, it was a necessity. And that necessity opened the door for Cristiano, even with Bologna resisting the idea. Sporting simply had no other option. At that point, Cristiano began training alongside an experienced and demanding squad. Sporting featured leaders such as João Pinto, the team captain and technical reference, Rui Jorge at left back, Beto in defense, and experienced names like André Cruz and Paulo Bento. In midfield and attack, young talents like Ricardo Quaresma and Hugo Viana competed for space. It was an environment with enormous pressure and no protection for young players, only performance mattered. As soon as Cristiano began performing consistently with the first team, even Bologna had to admit he was wrong. He publicly acknowledged that the player he once labeled as weak could become greater than Eusebio and Luis Figo, simply the greatest footballers Portugal had ever produced. Cristiano Ronaldo made his professional debut for Sporting on August 14, 2002. The match was a UEFA Champions League qualifier against Inter Milan at Estadio José Alvalade. Cristiano was just 17 years old and came on in the second half, replacing Tonito. And this is exactly where the real story begins.
In his very first professional appearance, Cristiano was already on the pitch in the Champions League. Coincidence or a sign of destiny? Years later, he would become the greatest player in the history of the competition, with records that may never be broken. And to think that not long before, he had been so harshly criticized. Can you imagine that coach today, watching everything Cristiano became? 5 Ballon d'Or awards, the greatest goal scorer in football history, the top scorer in international football, a physical and mental reference for generations. But this was only the first time. Throughout this journey, many would try to bring him down, and every time, the ending would be the same: Cristiano silencing his doubters. This is only the beginning. If you want to follow the complete story of how Cristiano Ronaldo became a football legend, like the video and subscribe to the channel. In episode 3, we will explore the start of his professional career, his first goals, titles, and the challenges that shaped the player the world would come to know.